6 months after Ambassador Sarah Chen's execution, the Galactic Council chambers on Zenith Prime stood empty. Dust had settled on the 7 great thrones. No one sat there anymore. 4 of the founding species had surrendered unconditionally, 2 were fragmented into civil war. The Krell Imperium existed only as scattered remnants hiding in the outer systems. President Elena Volkov walked through the silent chamber, her footsteps echoing off crystalline walls. Her security detail followed at a respectful distance. She had insisted on minimal escort. This place had enough ghosts without adding more living bodies. She stopped at the center of the chamber. Maintenance crews had cleaned away the ash, but Volkov knew what had happened here. Every human knew. The spot where Sarah Chen had died had become the most infamous location in the galaxy. Technicians set up holographic equipment. Volkov was about to address the galaxy from the very place where humanity's greatest diplomat had been murdered. The symbolism was deliberate. Humanity had fought its way back here, and now they would dictate the terms of peace from the Council's own seat of power. The cameras activated. Across thousands of worlds, billions of beings tuned in to watch, some in fear, some in hope, many in confusion. The humans had won, but no one knew what came next. 6 months ago, Volkov began, her voice calm and measured. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood here and asked for humanity to be treated as equals. She was murdered for that request. The Galactic Council declared humans too primitive, too dangerous for civilized space. They were half right. She paused, letting that sink in. We are dangerous. Every species capable of reaching the stars is dangerous. The difference is whether you use that capacity for domination or cooperation. The Council chose domination. They chose to burn diplomats rather than negotiate with them. That choice has consequences. Volkov pulled up a holographic display. It showed the current state of Council space. Collapsed governments, broken economies, fleets scattered or destroyed. 6 months of human warfare had accomplished what millennia of Council rule had supposedly prevented. Total chaos. We didn't want this, Volkov continued. We tried to join your civilization peacefully. We followed your rules, met your standards, accepted probationary status. We did everything right and you murdered us for it. So we showed you what humans do when the rules don't protect us. We survive, by any means necessary. She dismissed the tactical display and her expression softened slightly. But survival isn't enough. Sarah Chen didn't die dreaming of conquest. She died hoping for a better galaxy. So we're going to build one, whether you like it or not. Volkov outlined humanity's terms. The Galactic Council was dissolved permanently. In its place would be the Interspecies Assembly, with representation for every sapient species. No founding members, no permanent seats of power, no species-based hierarchy. One species, one vote, no exceptions. All species found guilty of war crimes would face trial in neutral courts. Leaders who ordered atrocities would be imprisoned, not executed. No species would be excluded from the assembly, but participation required accepting universal rights for all sapient beings. Reparations would be paid, but not in a way that would cripple economies. The goal was justice, not revenge. Humanity would help rebuild what was destroyed, in exchange for cooperation with the new order. Some of you will call this conquest, Volkov said. You'll say humans are just the new council, imposing our will on everyone else. You're wrong. We're giving you the choice we were denied. Participate as equals or isolate yourselves. No one will be burned for disagreeing. No one will be executed for asking questions. Those days are over. She looked directly at the camera. The galaxy will never forget what happened here. Neither will humanity. We'll carry the guilt of this war for generations. Thousands died because we refused to accept injustice quietly. We'll remember them. All of them. Not just Sarah Chen, but every being who died in this conflict. Their deaths will mean something, or we're no better than the council we destroyed. The speech ended. Reactions across the galaxy were mixed. Some species welcomed the new order. Others feared human dominance. Many simply didn't know what to think. Admiral Marcus Webb watched the speech from his quarters. President Volkov had offered him a position in the new government, recognition for his vital role in winning the war. He had declined. Instead, he submitted his resignation from military service, effective immediately. His first officer found him packing his personal effects. "Sir, you can't just leave. We need experienced commanders to help rebuild." "You need people who can sleep at night," Marcus replied. I'm not one of them anymore. He had won the war. He had avenged Sarah Chen. He had saved humanity from council oppression, and he couldn't look at himself in the mirror without seeing the faces of everyone who died following his orders. What will you do? His first officer asked. Remember, Marcus said simply. Someone has to remember what this cost. Someone has to carry that weight so maybe the next generation won't have to. He left the ship that had been his home for 15 years. He didn't look back. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Soldiers returned home to find they didn't fit anymore. The things they had seen, the things they had done, set them apart from people who had watched the war on screens. Victory parades felt hollow. Celebrations rang false. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto stood in the Project Pandora facility, watching technicians systematically destroy every weapon system, every research file, every prototype. He had argued against keeping any of it, even for defense. These weapons won the war, a young engineer protested. What if we need them again? Then we'll lose something more important than a war, Kenji replied. We'll lose the right to call ourselves civilized. These weapons work too well. They make war too easy. Humans can't be trusted with easy ways to kill. We're too good at convincing ourselves it's necessary. The last weapon system was destroyed. Kenji broadcast the destruction across every channel, making sure the galaxy saw. The message was clear. Humanity was disarming voluntarily to prove they meant what they said about building something better. But he kept detailed records. Not of how to build the weapons, but of what they did, what they cost. The footage of destroyed worlds, collapsed civilizations, refugees fleeing human advances, all of it archived, classified, and labeled with a simple warning. This is what happens when we stop being human. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo visited the memorial being built on Earth's moon. It would honor everyone who died in the war, humans and council species alike, thousands of names carved in stone, a reminder of what revenge actually cost. She found Ambassador Chen's name near the center. Below it, a quote, "You've shown us what we're really fighting for." I hope we're fighting for something good now, Sarah whispered. The memorial would open in a year. By then, the first sessions of the Interspecies Assembly would be underway. Former council species sitting alongside former enemies, all pretending they could build something better than what came before. It wouldn't be easy. Trust was broken, fear was real, and humanity's reputation as the reckoning species would last for generations. Parents across the galaxy would tell their children scary stories about the humans who destroyed the council in 6 months. But there was hope too. The Assembly's first act was establishing universal diplomatic protection. No ambassador from any species could be harmed for doing their job. Violations would face immediate intervention from a multinational force. They named it the Chen Accord, in memory of the woman whose death had changed everything. 1 year after the war ended, President Volkov returned to Zenith Prime. The old council chambers had been converted into a museum, preserving the site where Sarah Chen died. It was a grim place full of uncomfortable truths, but Volkov insisted it remain open. Why? A reporter asked. Why remind everyone of our worst moment? Because forgetting is easy, Volkov replied. Living with what you've done is hard, but it's necessary. This place reminds us what happens when powerful beings decide some lives matter less than others. It reminds us what we're capable of, both at our best and at our worst. She placed a wreath at the spot where Sarah had died. Fresh flowers delivered from Earth, a gesture of remembrance. Other species had started doing the same. The memorial had become a pilgrimage site, a place where beings from across the galaxy came to reflect on the cost of injustice. Admiral Webb never returned to Zenith Prime. He bought a small farm on a quiet colony world and lived alone. Sometimes former crew members visited. They would sit on his porch, not talking much, just existing in the same space with someone who understood. Do you think she'd forgive us? One young officer asked during a visit. Marcus thought about Sarah Chen, her kindness, her optimism, her belief that beings could choose to be better. I don't know, he said honestly, but I think she'd want us to keep trying. Not to forgive ourselves, but to try to build the galaxy she imagined, even if we don't deserve it. Years later, historians would debate the war endlessly. Some called it justified defense, others called it genocide. Most agreed it was both. Necessary and horrible, defensive and brutal, the worst of humanity and the best of humanity all tangled together. But everyone agreed on one thing: The galaxy had changed forever. The old rules were gone. Fleet Commander Zarthax stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. His best battlecruiser had fired enough energy to destroy a fortress, and the human platform had simply made the attack disappear. Not blocked it, not absorbed it, made it cease to exist. The distinction was terrifying. "Commander, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked quietly. The bridge crew had gone silent, everyone watching their commander and waiting. Zarthax straightened in his command chair. He had not conquered 16 worlds by showing uncertainty in front of his crew. "We advance. All ships move to engagement formation. Prepare full assault pattern." If one battlecruiser could not destroy a single platform, then 300 ships working together surely could. The Dominion fleet began moving deeper into the human system, weapons charging, shields at maximum. Every screen showed targeting data scrolling past. This would be the largest concentrated attack the 47th Fleet had ever unleashed. Captain Chen's voice came through again. "Commander, I really don't recommend this course of action." "You've demonstrated impressive defensive technology," Zarthax replied, "but you cannot hide behind it forever. When we destroy enough of your platforms, your defenses will fail. It's simple mathematics." "That's not what I'm worried about," Captain Chen said, and her voice carried genuine concern now. "Look, I don't want to damage your ships, Commander. You have crew aboard those vessels, families waiting for them back home. I know because we've been monitoring your communications, remember? Your second officer on the flagship just had a daughter 3 months ago. Congratulations, by the way." Zarthax felt ice run through his veins. They knew about his crew's personal lives. They had been watching the Dominion for decades, learning everything, preparing for this moment. "Your concern is noted but unnecessary," Zarthax said stiffly. "Dominion shields are impenetrable. Even if you possess advanced weapons, you cannot harm us." There was a long pause. Then Captain Chen sighed, the sound carrying a weight of resigned sadness. "Commander, please understand that we're about to demonstrate our weapon systems. I'm begging you to order your ships to hold position. What you're about to see is not a threat. It's a plea for you to reconsider." "The Dominion does not yield to threats," Zarthax declared. "All ships, open fire." 300 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Plasma cannons, kinetic accelerators, missile swarms, energy beams. Every weapon system the Dominion had developed over 1,000 years of conquest blazed across the space between the fleet and the human defensive line. The display became a wall of fire and destruction, enough firepower to sterilize an entire planet's surface within minutes. The human platforms made no attempt to evade. 50 ships hung in space, vastly outnumbered, facing an attack that should have erased them from existence. Zarthax watched his weapons approach the human line. Victory was seconds away. Then those seconds passed, and his victory vanished like morning mist. Every single weapon disappeared before reaching the human ships. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, missiles. All of them simply ceased to exist several kilometers from their targets. The pocket dimension defense that protected the single platform apparently protected the entire human fleet. 300 ships had fired, and not one shot had reached its target. Before Zarthax could issue new orders, the human ships moved. Not away, toward his fleet. They accelerated faster than anything he had ever seen, closing the distance in seconds rather than minutes. His tactical computer screamed warnings, but there was no time to react. The human ships fired. 50 weapons against 300 targets should have been insignificant. Instead, Zarthax watched in horror as his ships began dying. No, not dying. That was the worst part. The human weapons passed through his ship's shields as if they weren't there. They phased through armor like it was empty air. But instead of destroying the vessels, the weapons did something far more disturbing. They surgically disabled systems. Weapon platforms melted. Engine cores shut down. Shield generators fused into useless metal. But life support remained intact. Emergency systems continued functioning. The crew survived unharmed and trapped aboard dead ships. In less than 3 minutes, half of Zarthax's fleet was crippled. 150 warships, each representing decades of construction and billions in resources, reduced to floating debris. And not a single casualty. The humans had carefully, precisely disabled them without killing anyone. "Ceasefire. All ships, cease fire and hold position." Zarthax's voice cracked as he gave the order. Pride meant nothing when facing annihilation. Survival meant everything. The human weapons stopped immediately. No revenge strikes. No pressing their advantage. They simply stopped firing and waited. Captain Chen's voice returned and she sounded tired. I'm sorry, Commander. I really didn't want to do that. But you needed to understand. Are you willing to talk now? Zarthak slumped in his command chair, suddenly feeling every one of his 40 years of service. Yes, we will talk. Good. I'm going to explain some things and I need you to really listen. Can you do that? I can listen, Zarthak said quietly. Around him, his bridge crew sat in shocked silence. 83 years ago, humanity achieved faster-than-light travel, Captain Chen began. We were so excited. We thought we were alone in the universe, and suddenly we realized there might be others out there. We started exploring carefully, sending out small scout ships trying to make contact. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was harder. The first species we encountered was the Keltharians. They were being conquered by the Dominion. We watched from hiding as your ships bombed their cities and forced them into surrender. We watched you take their resources, force them to work in your factories, and suppress their culture. That's when we learned what kind of galaxy we lived in. Zarthak said nothing. The conquest of Keltharia had been 8 decades ago, a standard operation. He had not been part of it, but he knew the history. The Keltharians had resisted, so they had been crushed. That was how the Dominion maintained order. We explored more, Captain Chen continued. We found dozens of species under Dominion control. Some accepted it. Many didn't have a choice. We realized that if we announced ourselves, the Dominion would come for us too. So we made a decision. We would stay hidden. We would watch. We would learn. And we would prepare. For 80 years we've been studying you. Your language, your technology, your tactics, your culture. We tapped into your communications networks and learned everything we could. And while we learned, we built. We advanced. We prepared for the day when the Dominion would find Earth, because we knew eventually you would. Captain Chen's voice softened slightly. Here's what you need to understand, Commander. Your empire is built on technology that is over 1,000 years old. You've made improvements, yes, better shields, stronger weapons, but the fundamental technology hasn't changed. You know why? Because when you're winning, you don't innovate. You don't need to. You can overwhelm any resistance with numbers and establish superiority. Zarthax wanted to argue, but he couldn't. She was right. The Dominion's military technology had advanced slowly over the centuries, refined but not revolutionized. Why spend resources on research when current weapons worked perfectly well? Humanity didn't have that luxury, Captain Chen said. We knew we were facing an empire 1,000 years more advanced than us. So we didn't try to catch up. We tried to leap ahead. We threw everything we had into research. Our best minds, unlimited resources, complete focus. And we had one advantage you didn't. Desperation breeds innovation. Commander, the tactical display showed the human ships holding position, still outnumbering his functional vessels but making no aggressive moves. Zarthak studied them with new eyes. Each ship was smaller than his battlecruisers but clearly far more advanced. They represented 80 years of desperate innovation, a species preparing for survival against impossible odds. The weapons you just experienced use phase shift technology, Captain Chen explained. We manipulate quantum states to pass through normal matter. Your shields try to stop physical objects and energy. Our weapons exist in a state that your shields can't detect or block. And yes, we can destroy your ships entirely if we need to. We chose not to because we're not monsters. The pocket dimension defense is similar. We fold space around our vessels and platforms. Incoming attacks get redirected into dimensional space where the energy dissipates harmlessly. It's incredibly power-intensive, which is why we don't keep it active all the time. But we can activate it across our entire fleet in seconds. Zarthax finally found his voice. Why are you telling me this? Why reveal your capabilities? Because we want you to take a message back to the Dominion, Captain Chen replied. We don't want to fight you. We never did. That's why we stayed hidden for 80 years. But we also won't be conquered. We can't be conquered. You need to understand that clearly. She paused, letting that sink in. Commander, we're going to repair your damaged ships now. Consider it a demonstration of good faith. Repair them? Zarthax couldn't hide his confusion. Yes, watch your sensors. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Thousands of small objects emerged from the human ships moving toward his crippled fleet. The Grand Imperial Palace on the Dominion throne world stretched across 20 square kilometers of carefully manicured gardens and towering crystalline structures. Empress Talara VII sat upon the eternal throne, a seat that had been occupied by her bloodline for 3,000 years. She was reading reports when the priority military alert flashed across her private display. The 47th Subjugation Fleet was returning early from their mission to conquer the human system. Early returns meant only two things: complete success or complete failure. Given that the fleet had been gone only 3 days when the mission should have taken weeks, Empress Talara suspected she would not enjoy this report. Fleet Commander Zarthax appeared on the communication screen, and the Empress immediately knew her suspicion was correct. The commander looked exhausted, his 4 eyes carrying a weight she had never seen before. He had been one of her most successful fleet commanders, confident and capable. The person looking at her now seemed decades older. "Your Majesty," Zarthax said, his voice formal but strained. "I must report a failed subjugation attempt." The words hung in the air like poison. The Empress felt her primary heart skip a beat. The Dominion had not experienced a failed subjugation in living memory. Resistance, yes. Delayed conquests occasionally, but never complete failure. "Explain," she commanded, her voice cold. Zarthax took a breath and began his report. He left nothing out. The humans speaking perfect Dominion standard. The thousands of hidden defense platforms. The pocket dimension shields that made their weapons useless. The phase shift weapons that passed through Dominion defenses like they were empty air. The surgical disabling of half his fleet in 3 minutes. The nanite swarms that repaired everything as a demonstration of their capabilities. The Empress listened in growing disbelief. Every word Zarthax spoke contradicted everything the Dominion understood about the galaxy. Advanced technology took centuries to develop. Primitive species that had barely achieved spaceflight did not possess weapons that surpassed the Dominion's best military hardware. Yet Zarthax was not a liar, and his report was supported by data from every ship in his fleet. "They let you leave," the Empress said when he finished. "It was not a question." "Yes, Your Majesty. They repaired our ships and sent us home with a message. They claim they don't want war. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate," the Empress repeated the word as if it tasted bitter. "The Dominion does not negotiate with primitives." "With respect, Your Majesty, they are not primitives. They are more advanced than we are. Significantly more advanced." The Empress stood from her throne, her robes flowing around her like liquid silver. She paced across the platform, her mind racing through possibilities. A species more advanced than the Dominion. It challenged everything their empire was built upon. The Dominion's power came from military superiority. If that superiority was gone, what remained? "Summon the War Council," she ordered. Immediately, within the hour, the highest military commanders and strategic advisors of the Dominion gathered in the Imperial War Room. The massive chamber was filled with holographic displays showing every corner of their territory. Thousands of worlds under their control, defended by millions of ships, the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Empress Talara stood at the head of the chamber as Fleet Commander Zarthax presented his report again, this time with full tactical data. The Council watched the recordings of the battle in stunned silence. They saw the human weapons pass through shields. They saw Dominion ships disabled with surgical precision. They saw the impossible made real. When the presentation ended, chaos erupted. Voices rose in argument and denial. Some council members insisted the data must be falsified. Others demanded immediate retaliation. A few called for caution. The Empress let them argue for several minutes before she raised her hand for silence. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "We will not waste time denying reality. The humans possess superior technology. The question is, what do we do about it?" Grand Admiral Korvath, the oldest member of the Council, spoke first. His voice was grave. "We must assume they are a threat not just to one fleet, but to the Dominion itself. If they can defeat 300 ships so easily, they could potentially threaten our entire military." "Then we overwhelm them," War Master Thren declared. He was younger, aggressive, and had never experienced defeat. "We send not one fleet, but many. They may have advanced technology, but they are one system. We control thousands of worlds. We mobilize the Grand Armada, 10,000 ships. Let them try to defend against that." Several council members nodded in agreement. The Empress considered the proposal. The Grand Armada represented 40% of their total military strength. It had not been mobilized in 3 centuries, not since the Great Consolidation Wars. Surely no single species could stand against such overwhelming force. Fleet Commander Zarthax, the Empress addressed him directly. Do you believe the Grand Armada could defeat the humans? Zarthax was quiet for a long moment. Everyone in the chamber watched him, waiting for his answer. Finally he spoke, and his words carried the weight of terrible certainty. Your Majesty, I don't know. What I do know is that the humans only showed us a fraction of their capabilities. They disabled half my fleet in 3 minutes without killing a single crew member. That level of restraint requires not just superior technology, but complete confidence in that superiority. They weren't worried about us. They were worried about hurting us, he paused, then continued. The defense platforms we saw numbered 12,000, but those were just the ones they activated for us to see. How many more do they have hidden? How much more advanced are their actual warships compared to the defensive platforms? We don't know. They've been preparing for this confrontation for 80 years. We need to consider the possibility that they've been preparing specifically to defeat the Dominion. The chamber fell silent. The idea that a species had been watching them, studying them, and preparing defenses specifically designed to counter Dominion tactics was deeply unsettling. It meant every advantage the Dominion had might be useless. Empress Talara made her decision. We mobilize the Grand Armada, but this will not be a simple subjugation. It will be a demonstration of the Dominion's full might. If the humans can be defeated, we defeat them. If they cannot be defeated through force, then we will have shown them the full extent of what they face. Either way, we will know the truth of their capabilities. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. I will personally oversee this campaign. The Grand Armada launches in 1 week. Prepare every ship, every weapon system, every tactic we possess. If humanity wants to challenge the Dominion, they will face the full weight of our power. The council erupted in activity, commanders rushing to begin preparations. Only Grand Admiral Korvath remained behind as the others left. He approached the Empress quietly. Your Majesty, may I speak candidly? He asked. Always, old friend. I fear we are making a mistake. The humans sent a message. They offered to negotiate. Perhaps we should explore that option before committing to war. The Empress shook her head. The Dominion's power is built on the perception of invincibility. If word spreads that a single species forced us to negotiate from a position of weakness, our entire empire could destabilize. How many subjugated worlds would rise in rebellion if they believed the Dominion could be defeated? But if we attack and lose... Korvath left the sentence unfinished. Then we will know the truth, the Empress replied. Better to know and adapt than to live in uncertainty. And there is always the possibility that we will win. The humans may be advanced, but we have numbers and experience on our side. Korvath bowed his head in acceptance. As you command, Your Majesty. I hope you are right. As he left, the Empress returned to the war room displays, studying the images of Earth and its defensive systems. Such a small, simple system. 1 yellow star, a handful of planets, nothing remarkable by galactic standards. Yet it had produced a species that had gone from primitive to advanced in less than a century. How was that possible? She thought about Zarthax's report. The humans had been monitoring Dominion communications for 80 years. They knew about Dominion culture, tactics, everything. They had studied their enemy thoroughly before revealing themselves. That spoke to careful planning and patience, dangerous qualities in an opponent. The Empress accessed the human communications that Zarthax had recorded. She listened to Captain Chen's voice, analyzing every word for weakness or deception. The human had been friendly, almost casual. Even while demonstrating overwhelming technological superiority, she had shown concern for Dominion crew members. She had repaired the damaged ships. She had asked for negotiation. What kind of species acted that way? The Dominion had never encountered anything like it. In the Empress's experience, species with power used it to dominate. That was the natural order. The strong ruled, the weak submitted. But these humans claimed they didn't want conquest. They claimed they only wanted to defend themselves. Could that be true? Or was it a trick, a way to lower the Dominion's guard before striking? The Empress couldn't answer that question, and it frustrated her. Admiral Marcus Torres stood in the command center of Luna Base, the heavily fortified military installation built into Earth's moon. The massive circular room was filled with holographic displays showing every corner of the Sol system. Thousands of defense platforms glowed like stars on the tactical map. Hidden fleet elements waited in compressed dimensional space. The Sol defense grid was fully active and ready. Around him, officers from every branch of the Terran Defense Force monitored their stations with quiet efficiency. Some were humans, but others represented the handful of species that had quietly joined humanity over the past decades. Refugees from Dominion oppression, defectors seeking freedom, volunteers who believed in Earth's vision of a different kind of galaxy. They had become part of humanity's extended family, living proof that cooperation was possible. The alarm everyone had been expecting finally sounded. Lieutenant Park, a young woman at the sensor station, called out with controlled urgency. "Admiral, we have massive hyperspace disturbances on the system edge. Multiple signatures. Counting 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, she paused, double-checking her readings. "Sir, we're reading 10,000 distinct vessels emerging from hyperspace." "It's the Grand Armada," Torres nodded slowly. The intelligence reports had been accurate. The Dominion was coming with everything they had. He opened a channel to the Terran Council chambers deep beneath the Earth's surface. "Council, the Grand Armada has arrived. Proceed with Plan Alpha." From Earth, the response came immediately. It was Council Speaker Zhang, her voice calm despite the massive fleet that had just appeared at their doorstep. "Confirmed, Admiral. The Council has voted. We allow them to approach. Do not fire first. Make them understand." Torres closed the channel and turned to his communications officer. "Send a greeting to the Dominion flagship. Standard protocol. Let's be polite." Across the system, Empress Talara stood on the bridge of her command dreadnought, the heart of Empire. Around her vessel, 10,000 warships hung in perfect formation, the most powerful military force ever assembled in Dominion history. It was a sight that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. Surely humanity would see this and understand the futility of resistance. "Your Majesty, we're receiving a transmission from the humans," her communications officer reported. "Put it through." A male voice came across the channel, speaking perfect Dominion standard, with a slight accent that suggested age and experience. "Greetings, Empress Talara. I am Admiral Marcus Torres of the Terran Defense Force. We've been expecting you." "Welcome to the Sol system." The Empress felt a flash of irritation. "Expecting them? Welcome?" The audacity was remarkable. "Admiral Torres, you see the fleet before you. This is the full military might of the Galactic Dominion. You have one opportunity to surrender peacefully." There was a pause. Then Torres replied, and the Empress could hear a note of sadness in his voice. "Your Majesty, I was afraid you'd say that. My superiors and I had hoped that after Fleet Commander Zarthax delivered our message, you would choose dialogue over demonstration. But we understand. You need to see for yourselves. So we're going to show you." "Show us what?" the Empress demanded. "Why war with humanity would be a very bad idea. Your Majesty, what you're about to see is our defensive posture. Please understand that we take no joy in this display. But you need to know what you're facing before you make a decision that could cost millions of lives on both sides." The Empress frowned at her tactical display. The humans had approximately 50 ships visible, positioned in a loose defensive formation around their inner system. The defense platforms that Fleet Commander Zarthax had reported were active, glowing on sensors. But 12,000 platforms against 10,000 warships was still a losing proposition for the defenders. What could they possibly show her that would change that mathematics? "Admiral Torres, your defensive platforms are noted but insufficient." "You cannot possibly believe—" "Please watch your sensors, Your Majesty," Torres interrupted gently. "We're activating our full defensive grid now." The Empress's tactical officer suddenly gasped. "Your Majesty, I'm reading massive power surges throughout the system. Multiple signatures activating." The tactical display exploded with contacts. What had been 12,000 defense platforms became 20,000, then 50,000, then more. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter began to glow with energy signatures. Each asteroid that the Dominion had assumed was natural rock revealed itself to be a disguised weapons platform. There were tens of thousands of them, but that was only the beginning. The moons of Jupiter started unfolding like mechanical flowers. Saturn's moon Titan split open, revealing weapons emplacements built into its core. Neptune's largest moon did the same. Every major body in the outer system was revealed to be a fortress. They hadn't just built defenses, they had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Reading 200,000 active defense platforms, the tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "No, correcting. 300,000. They're still activating. Your Majesty, the energy readings are off the scale." But the true horror was yet to come. Between Mars and Jupiter, space itself began to ripple and tear. The Empress watched in disbelief as an enormous structure began folding into real space from some higher dimension. It was a Dyson swarm, but not built around their sun. It was built around that region of space itself. A massive lattice of interconnected combat platforms that had been hidden in compressed dimensional space. The structure was kilometers, thick and wrapped in a sphere that could contain Earth's orbit twice over. They compressed an entire fleet worth of platforms into dimensional space. The Empress's science officer whispered, "That should be impossible. The energy requirements alone." The platforms continued emerging, unfolding from their hidden dimensions. The tactical computer struggled to count them, the number climbing past 1 million active contacts. The entire Sol system had transformed from a lightly defended system into the most heavily fortified location the Dominion had ever encountered. "We're reading 1.3 million active weapons platforms," the tactical officer reported. "Energy signatures suggest each platform is equipped with multiple weapon systems. Your Majesty, they have enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet 100 times over." The Empress stood frozen, her mind unable to process what she was seeing. 1.3 million platforms. They had hidden that many weapons systems, kept them concealed for decades, and revealed them only now to make a point. The sheer scale of preparation was staggering. Admiral Torres's voice returned, still calm, still polite. "Your Majesty, what you're seeing is our home system defense grid. We call it the Sol Wall. It's been under construction for 70 years. Every resource we could spare, every innovation we developed, went into building it. We did this because we knew one day the Dominion would come, and we needed you to understand something very clearly." He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried absolute certainty. "You cannot conquer us. You could send every ship in your empire, and you still couldn't break through our defenses. We have weapons you can't block, defenses you can't penetrate, and technology you can't counter. We are not primitives hoping for mercy. We are your equals, and we will defend our home." The Empress found her voice, though it came out weaker than she intended. This is your defensive force?" "This is our defensive grid, yes," Torres confirmed. "Our actual fleet is something else entirely. Would you like to see it?" "No," the Empress said immediately. She did not want to see more. This was already beyond anything she had imagined. "No, that won't be necessary." Fleet Commander Zarthax, who stood at a rear station on the bridge, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I tried to warn the Council. They only showed us a fraction." "You did warn us," the Empress acknowledged, still staring at the display. "We simply couldn't imagine the scale." Admiral Torres spoke again. "Your Majesty, I want to be very clear about something. We don't want to use these weapons. We built them hoping we'd never need to. We'd much rather talk, trade, share knowledge, become friends if possible. But we built them because we learned what happens to species that can't defend themselves against the Dominion. We won't be conquered. We can't be conquered. So the question now is, what happens next?" The Empress felt something she had never experienced in her 30 years of rule. Fear. Not for herself, but for her empire. She had brought 10,000 ships to intimidate humanity into submission. Instead, humanity had shown her that they could annihilate her entire fleet without breaking a sweat. They had that power, that capability, and they were choosing not to use it. That was the most frightening part. They could kill her, destroy her fleet, and potentially wage war against the entire Dominion if they chose. But they didn't want to. They wanted to talk. What kind of species had that much power and chose restraint? Grand Admiral Korvath moved to stand beside the Empress, his voice low so only she could hear. "Your Majesty, I believe we should accept their offer to negotiate. If we negotiate now, we negotiate from weakness," the Empress said quietly. "The entire galaxy will know we backed down. If we attack now, we die," Korvath replied bluntly. "And our deaths will accomplish nothing except proving that humanity can destroy us." 3 weeks after the Grand Armada's arrival at Sol, Empress Talara walked through the corridors of Sanctuary Station. The massive space station had been built in neutral space, exactly halfway between Dominion territory and humanity's expanding sphere of influence. It was a marvel of combined architecture, blending Dominion crystalline aesthetics with humanity's efficient modular design. The station itself represented what cooperation could achieve when two advanced species worked together. The Empress wore simple diplomatic robes rather than her full imperial regalia. Admiral Torres had suggested that formal ceremonies could come later, once they had established actual communication. For now, they would meet as equals, without the weight of protocol and tradition obscuring honest conversation. It was a strange feeling for someone who had lived her entire life surrounded by formality. She entered the central meeting chamber accompanied only by Grand Admiral Korvath and 2 advisors. On the other side of the round table sat Admiral Marcus Torres, Captain Sarah Chen, and 2 human diplomatic officials. The room was deliberately designed to avoid any sense of hierarchy. Round table, equal lighting, no throne or raised platforms. Just people talking. "Your Majesty, thank you for coming," Admiral Torres said, standing to greet her. He was older than she had imagined from his voice alone, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of decades of responsibility. Captain Chen stood beside him, the woman whose cheerful voice had first greeted Fleet Commander Zarthax. She was younger, sharp-eyed, and carried herself with quiet confidence. "Admiral, Captain." The Empress acknowledged them with a slight bow. "Let us begin." They sat, and for a moment no one spoke. The Empress studied the humans across from her. They didn't look particularly impressive. No unusual physical features, no obvious enhancements. Just normal biological beings who happened to have created technology that surpassed millennia of Dominion development. How had they done it? Admiral Torres broke the silence. "Your Majesty, I think it's important we start with honesty. You came to Seoul expecting to conquer us. Instead, you found something you didn't expect. That must have been difficult to process." The Empress appreciated his directness. "It was humbling," she admitted. "The Dominion has not experienced humility in a very long time. Perhaps that is part of our problem." "Humility isn't weakness," Torres replied. "It's recognizing reality accurately. And the reality is that both our civilizations are powerful. The question is what we do with that power." Captain Chen leaned forward slightly. "Your Majesty, we've been studying the Dominion for 80 years. We know about your conquests, your subjugation protocols, your methods of control. We also know about your culture, your art, your scientific achievements from before you became an empire. You used to be explorers and researchers. What happened?" The Empress felt a flash of irritation at the presumption, but then she realized Chen was right. The ancient Dominion before the Empire had been different. They had explored for knowledge rather than conquest. "When had that changed?" "Success changed us," the Empress said quietly. "We discovered we could conquer, so we did. Each victory made the next one easier. Each subjugated world made us stronger. After 1,000 years, conquest became our identity. We forgot why we started exploring in the first place." "That's a common pattern," Torres said. "Earth had empires too, many of them throughout our history. They all followed similar paths. Expansion, dominance, eventual stagnation. We learned from those mistakes when we reached the stars. We decided to try something different." One of the Empress's advisors, a stern female named Korath, spoke up. "You claim you want cooperation, but you hold all the advantages. Why should we believe you won't eventually use your technological superiority to dominate us?" Captain Chen answered. "Because dominance is expensive and cooperation is profitable. Look at what we could share. Medical technology that could extend your average lifespan by decades. Energy systems that could provide unlimited power to every world in your empire. Manufacturing techniques that could eliminate scarcity across your civilization. We have all of this, and we're willing to share it freely." "Freely?" Korath's voice was skeptical. "Nothing is free. What do you want in return?" "Cultural exchange," Torres said simply. "Open borders for peaceful travel. Trade agreements. Mutual defense pacts. And most importantly, we want the Dominion to stop conquering species that can't defend themselves. Allow them self-determination. Trade with them instead of subjugating them." The Empress leaned back, considering. What Torres described would fundamentally change the Dominion's nature. They had built their empire on subjugation. If they stopped conquering and started cooperating, what would they become? "The Dominion controls thousands of worlds," the Empress said slowly. "Many of them are not willing subjects. If we suddenly offered them freedom, chaos would result. Rebellions, conflicts, potential civil wars across our territory." "We know," Captain Chen said. "We've thought about this extensively. That's why we're proposing a gradual transition. Start with the most recently conquered worlds. Offer them paths to independence or partnership based on genuine cooperation. Give them access to better technology, better living standards. Show them that working with the Dominion is better than being ruled by it. The older subjugated worlds will see this and want the same. Eventually, you transform from an empire of conquest to a federation of willing partners." Grand Admiral Korvath spoke for the first time. That is an idealistic vision, but implementation would be extremely complex. We'd help, Torres offered. Not interfere, but support. Diplomatic assistance, technological aid, economic support during the transition. We want this to succeed because a stable, cooperative dominion is in everyone's interest. The Empress felt the weight of the decision before her. Everything Torres and Chen described made logical sense. A cooperative empire would be more stable, more prosperous, and ultimately stronger than one maintained through force. But it required her to admit that the Dominion's 1,000-year approach had been wrong. It required fundamental change at every level of their civilization. There is another concern, the Empress said. If the Dominion is seen as weak, if other powers believe we have lost our strength, we may face external threats. The galaxy has many dangerous species. That's where mutual defense comes in, Torres replied. Any species that threatens the Dominion would face both Dominion and Terran forces. Combined, we'd be essentially unbeatable. But more importantly, we'd work together to establish a new galactic order, one based on cooperation rather than conquest. Other species would see the benefits and want to join. Gradually, we build a community of civilizations that support each other rather than fight each other. Captain Chen pulled up a holographic display showing star charts. We've already made contact with several species that were hiding from the Dominion. They've been watching this situation carefully. If we can show them that change is possible, that cooperation works, they'll come out of hiding. The galaxy has dozens, maybe hundreds of species that have been avoiding contact because they feared being conquered. Imagine what we could accomplish if they all joined a cooperative alliance. The Empress studied the star charts. So many hidden civilizations, all afraid. The Dominion had created that fear through their actions. Changing that legacy would take time, effort, and genuine commitment. But looking at what humanity had accomplished in just 80 years of focused development, she could imagine what multiple species working together could achieve. Your Majesty, Torres said gently, I know this is a difficult decision. You're being asked to transform your entire civilization's approach to the galaxy. But consider what you've seen in Seoul. We built all of that in 80 years because we were desperate and united. Imagine what we could build together in 100 years, in 1,000. Medicine that could cure any disease. Technology that could terraform worlds. Ships that could travel between galaxies. All of that is possible if we work together instead of fighting. The Empress closed her eyes, thinking about her empire. Thousands of worlds, trillions of subjects, a civilization that had endured for millennia. She had a responsibility to all of them. The old path, the path of conquest and dominance, had worked for a long time. But it had also led to stagnation. The Dominion's technology barely advanced anymore because they had no competition, no motivation to innovate. Humanity had shown what was possible when species pushed themselves to advance. They had leapfrogged 1,000 years of development in less than a century. If the Dominion embraced that same drive to innovate, worked with humanity and other species to advance together, what could they become? I will need time, the Empress said finally. This decision affects every aspect of Dominion society. I must consult with my council, with planetary governors, with the people themselves. This cannot be a decree from the throne. It must be a choice our civilization makes together. We understand, Torres said. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere. And while you're deciding, we'd like to offer a demonstration of good faith. We're prepared to share several technologies immediately. No strings attached. Medical nanites that can cure most diseases. Fusion reactors that can provide clean energy.